Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first Building Empires panel session of the week. I'd like to thank Doug, Azedine, and Jaryd for making the time to join us today. Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
for having me.
What about me?
Thanks for having us.
I'm here too.
Oh, yeah, and you, Adam. Thanks, Adam. I did forget about you, yeah. But thanks. Thanks for taking the time. So we've this one's open for you. I think YouTube or whatever. Hey Summit just bounced half the people, so hopefully they'll make their way back shortly. But yeah, thanks for coming. We're gonna leave this floor open to you guys. If you want to ask questions, feel free to dig in. Adam and I have got some stuff that we've got here to use as well if we want to. But we're definitely going to prioritize any questions that you have, you guys who are watching. So. So how is everybody? Just do a quick round the table. Jaryd, tell us, what have you been up to?
I'm good, thank you. What I've been up to, just got back from a sailing trip over the weekend and just working, basically, building a business, having fun, doing more fulfilling things within the business, more coaching and stuff like that. Which has been quite good. And we were just discussing prior to coming on about the Google changes and some of the things that we think we should be doing in terms of being patient and stuff with it. Yeah, I think that could be some. I feel that energetically, I feel there could be some questions around this.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe some questions. Yeah, and not sure about so many answers, but some questions for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Azedine, thanks for joining us. You're kind of everyone here has done a talk today. So if you've missed that, you can go back and watch it in the Summit software that you're kind of signed up to. But Azedine did a talk on behalf of Otis, kind of. So yeah, thanks for doing that, Azedine. How are you doing?
Hi guys, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Adam, for having me as well. And nice meeting you, Doug. I've been actually following you for a long time. If I recall, since 2013. Jaryd, I don't know him yet, but I think I saw one of his website. I don't recall. But most of you guys, I already kept track of you guys. But I'm doing great. Very busy, with the latest Google update. But I'm okay. I'm just keep building, and I'm not worried at all. because you would be worried when you see a website that you didn't touch for a long time. It goes up and down, and I don't even touch them. Like, what are you talking about with this update? So, but I don't recommend that either.
Surely Doug's not old enough for you to be following for 10 years, like.
Yeah.
No, I'm 57, man. So I
Sounds like Benjamin Button. As he gets the younger he looks.
Good to meet you, Azedine. Is that how you say it? Cool. Good to meet you. And then for me, I was just telling you guys, I took a day off. I've been taking more days off, but I live near a national park. I don't know if this will focus well. I'll give the camera a second there.
Nice.
I mean, yeah, it's like alpine up there. It's a 45-minute drive. And I'm like, I got to go up there more often. So a good way to not look at the analytics is go where you don't have any kind of connection. I had no cell phone service. I knew that was going to be the case. Like, I pulled out of my driveway and put my phone on airplane mode. And then it's like, well, I just got a nice day ahead of me. So yesterday was a good day. Now we're back in the office.
Yeah. Awesome. So yes, we've got a few people here now. So we've got Daniel, we've got Chris, we've got Alison, we've got another Doug, we've got Maeve, we've got Sashi, we've got Sue, and we've got Shakir. So welcome everybody. So okay, I guess I'll kick it off right with the panel. So it's going to start really broad, right? And we'll take it round in the circle. So we'll start with you, Doug, as we started with you last time. So someone at the party asks you what you do. What do you say?
Nowadays, well, it depends on the kind of party, of course, but assuming like a general population, I'll often say I do a couple podcasts and I have a YouTube channel. Now, it's only been a year or two that I've been able to say that. People really didn't know what a podcast was. Again, general population, they may not really know what you're talking about, even though like, a lot of us have been listening to podcasts for like, 10, 15 years or so. And if it's a more specific audience, so for example, in about a month, I'm going to a little retreat. It's called Camp Fi. So it's financial independence, but a lot of the people are into side hustles and they understand affiliate marketing and websites. So if it's a more sophisticated audience, I can say, I have a podcast. I talk about affiliate marketing and SEO and stuff like that. And then they're like, oh, that's really interesting. And they can dig deeper. But it really depends on who you're talking to and then like how much you want to talk about it too. So sometimes they'll just glaze over. They're like, oh, you can make any money doing that. Interesting. So, or I have a friend who did that. But yeah, these days I could say podcast, YouTube, and that can like get the ball rolling. They'll ask what the content is, and you could talk about, whatever piques their interest most. There's a few routes you can go, of course.
So you have to get the old, my friend does that.
Yeah.
My friend tried YouTube once. Didn't work for him. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. I forgot to ask you, Adam, as well, like at the start, how you doing? I've forgotten you again, so yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah. Same as this morning when we did our little talk this morning.
Yeah. I already asked you how you doing. I feel like it's done, But
yeah.
Azedine, like, what do you do? What do you tell people you do?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
What is it that you tell people you do at a party?
That's a good question. When people ask me, I just say internet marketing. Then which kind of internet marketing? Can you tell me more about it? So just the same thing as make money online, but it's not. I'm not going to show you a Lamborghini to sell you a course, right? I'm not that guy. But when they try to keep asking, I just say, you know what? It's like a publishing media. We publish content online. We make money from it. That's it. Simple as that. That's the only way they can understand it.
Yeah. Well, I find if you say internet marketing, people glaze over like pretty quick. So
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, it depends how much you want to have a conversation. I guess that's a killer for as far as I know. Jaryd, what about you? Like,
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm similar to Doug. I sort of gauge who has asked the question in the environment I'm in, and usually it's I tell people that sometimes I say I have a few small online businesses. Sometimes I say I teach people to buy websites. Sometimes I'll say I teach people to buy websites and online businesses. Sometimes I'll tell them all of that and then I help them scale them. It just depends on the vibe and the environment that I'm in. Usually it's like I have a small business where we teach people to buy businesses.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time it sounds a bit too scary for people to dig into because they don't know much about it. So it's just sort of, it ends at that. But for those who are interested, actually a few months ago, I was at the skate park and I met a guy who I said, what do you do? He's an English guy. He's been living in Australia now for 9 years. And he said, I sold a business, an online business. I was like, oh, cool. I said, I'm curious, where did you sell this business? And he said, have you ever heard of Flipper? And I just laughed. I said, yeah, I know a lot of the guys from Flipper. And then he asked what I did. And then we just hit it off and became really good mates. So it can be quite random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Cool. Okay, yeah. I mean, Adam and I use the same tack now. We just say we're into website investing and we help others invest in websites. And that usually gauges a little bit of interest because it's like a bit outside the norm. We didn't talk about marketing and stuff like that. So,
I like it.
Yeah. That's generally the tack we take now. So we've got our first few questions. So we'll hit those up before we go any further. So Niche Campus says, what's the number one change that took you from your first $200 to $1,000 per month side revenue? So I'll let anyone take that. Okay, Doug.
I'll go here. Yeah. So really it was just time. So I was already doing what I needed to do to make 10 or I guess like 10K or whatever, but it just took a while to get there. So 200 to 1,000. A lot of times if you've, let's say you're starting from scratch, I mean, it may just take another few months, and there's a good chance you'll jump from like 200 to 500 to 1,000. Like that's not unusual to have like a really sharp growth curve in the beginning before you kind of flatten out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For me, it depends of the niche. Now, if you go in for big tickets items, maybe you can make the 200 in 3 months, 4 months, 2 months. We don't know. It depends on the competition too, because I'm pretty sure if you go for the high items, I'm pretty sure a lot of guys are thinking the same thing, right? So maybe, like I mentioned on the presentation, if you go through the trending topics, you can find a product before anybody else, and you can take advantage of that. That's how you will be a bit ahead of the game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both of you guys. It's a mixture of just if you're doing the right inputs, and they're good inputs, and you just give yourself a decent time frame, then you're going to eventually get there. I believe, and the niche is definitely a part of the factor of how quick, I believe, and the competition out there. It may take a long time for you to get some traction and build up some. If we're talking about content sites, build up some authority and a decent content base of content. And then traffic. It can take you time, and sometimes, I think the main thing to think about is understanding and being comfortable with growth is not linear. Like it's just it can be like, oh, I got to $500 from 200 a month, and then I go down to 400. And sometimes people think about 1 month being like, oh my god, it's a nightmare, I'm going backwards. But if you're putting the good inputs in, and it's for the content site, it's just publishing content, some of that stuff, simple things, and then if you give yourself time, you can get there. Most people freak out and they don't have the mindset to understand that the time frame is like probably the most important thing. So
that's really interesting on that. Really interesting on that one. And John Dykstra put out an email this week, which basically just literally ties into what you said. And he said one of his literally his biggest site over the last 12 months. It's been a very slow decline. It hasn't been hitting an update or anything, but it's lost about 50% of its traffic over the last 12 months. And he's like, what am I doing? Like, what have I done? What am I doing differently? He basically said, nothing. Like, I know what I do works. I'm going to keep continuing business as usual, pushing out good quality content, doing everything that I've done for the past 10 years that I know works, because you've got to put it into perspective. And then he put in several examples of bigger websites over a long period of time, and their traffic dips for a year, and then it goes back up, and then it dips a little bit, and then it goes up higher, and then it dips a little bit, and it's that kind of roller coaster. But so the thing that makes those sites different to other sites, especially these bigger sites, is that they didn't stop publishing content. They didn't stop doing the things that got them to that position as soon as traffic dropped a little bit. They just carried on that business as usual, pushing out good quality content, going back and updating their content, making it the best they can. And then over time, Google should reward you, and over a time horizon of a couple of years, and that evens itself out. So it was very timely that he put out that email, and it's literally just what you just said, Jaryd, basically.
Yeah, and I think once you've got to your first, like the first 100's the hardest, right? You get, especially if you're starting fresh, like it can take a long time. It can be really discouraging, and that's why a lot of people give up. But if you've got to your 200, then you're already onto a winner. So keep pushing through. It's probably going to be easier to get to that than it was to get to the first 100. So yeah, okay, good answers. As expected, we've got the question we were waiting for. The Google update, how much should we panic? Anyone want to take that first?
Yeah, I can start if you guys want.
Go for it.
So for the latest Google update, I wouldn't panic for now, because first of all, the update is not done yet. But what you can do, you can start tracking your competitors to see if their traffic went down as well. So you can you can do that task, just collecting the data for now and wait. Now, if the update is done, then you know that your site really got hit. But for now, you may wait a bit. When the update is done, collect the data about your competitors. You can even go high. You can go to the authority website, not just your little competitors, just for the big media. Let's say, for example, go to Wirecutter to see why they didn't drop. So you have to check all those to make sure that you are doing something right or wrong, right? You can't just go then start updating the article. You don't even know what happened. We don't know. Maybe Google don't know either. So let's just wait. But what you can do too, you can go into your Google Search Console if you are using your Search Console and check if some of your previous ranking pages, if they are, let's say, not de-indexed, but they are removed from the search, from Google search. But the thing is, sometimes you find them like they're not showing on the Google Search Console, but when you go on Google, you put site colon your page and you find the pages there. So it's a bit confusing. So you really have to analyze both sides. Don't just assume that, oh, the page is not ranking anymore or anything like that. That's how I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, I agree. We briefly spoke about this, but I guess a good question to also ask Chris to add on to this is not just how much should we panic, but also how long should we wait after till we find out, it's completely rolled out before we look at the data and make decisions on what we need to change. I think that's what I'm thinking about. Like, do I wait a week? Do I wait 2, 3, or a month before I really go, I can really verify with confidence that this is what my site does or doesn't have or is doing not as well as Google may want it to be done to be able to rank my site.
I guess it's worth pointing out as well. Quite often you'll find that it's a good time to actually kind of reevaluate the site if it does get hit a little bit and to try and make improvements. But quite often you won't really see maybe a reversed or any benefits again until the next update, so the next core update. So you can kind of put in a lot of work and feel like, oh, I'm just putting all this work into nothing, and then you get the next core update, and then you kind of see the kickback. So, I think it's a good time to like sit down, evaluate like what you should be doing better on the site, what you can improve, and then just keep pushing forward, assuming it hasn't gone to zero, but like keep pushing forward, and then wait for the next update, and hopefully you'll see the rewards of your efforts. Sorry, Doug, were you going to add?
Oh, I was going to add one. I agree with what you guys said too. But one thing that I hear people say is like, don't do anything, blah, blah, blah. And I wouldn't recommend anyone take drastic action, but I think all of us agree that going back to your old content and improving it and adding to it is a good thing. And I'm afraid sometimes people hear us say, don't do anything, and they literally don't do anything. But maybe they should be going back and improving their old content, which is a best practice they should be doing anyway. So do you guys agree with that? Is that's a very fine nuance that I think people just, it's like, don't do anything because Google thinks you're doing something. It's like, no kidding. You're improving the content, which is what they're telling you to do. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree, because there's sometimes people can take things that you say quite literally, and there's different levels of context to it depending on people's different businesses and where that business may be at. And yeah, I totally agree. It's not that to not do anything, it's to wait and see what you should do.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, don't do anything. Just to not panic.
Sorry, just on that one, Doug. Do you have any tips for people watching to how would you go back and improve your content? Like, do you have like a framework or a process that you would follow to do?
I would go to niche website builders and have an FAQ service.
Nice.
And then just hire them. They have a whole thing. They get the people also ask. There's a whole system, right? You could do it yourself, of course. I think just to go a little bit deeper, one thing you can do, like no paid tools involved, go to the Search Console, filter on your positions and compare your previous positions to where you are now. You can see where you've dropped a little bit. Go ahead and filter it on maybe like the number of impressions so you can get rid of the noise. And then basically you can go and see where you've lost clicks because your position has dropped, go and update those. You were ranking before, so maybe there's a chance that you could improve those. As you're going through, you may be able to see some queries in there that you can add as maybe a subheading to pull in more long tail keywords. So you can go much deeper on that, but go poke around with those reports in the Search Console. It's free.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you can use some. I've got it saved somewhere in a notepad, but there's some clever regex which you can put into Search Console to pull up all the question-based queries that page is ranking for, and you can see all the kind of the long tail questions instead of just using people also ask. You can then say, well, the page is ranking for these kinds of questions which Google think are related as well. Can I add those in somewhere too?
Right, we're getting questions thick and fast, so we're going to have to start ripping through them a little bit because we're finishing on the hour, so we've got 25 minutes left for everyone. Jaryd, you got a fellow countryman on the stream as well.
Hey, Nathan.
Cool. So from Daniel, as many of you guys have been through a fair few Google updates, what do you? I think we covered that one actually. Am I just starting the idea of losing? Okay, cool. I think we covered that. That's good. Greg, could you talk about the benefits differences between buying link services versus buying an age domain to pick up the links? I don't know if we were the best. Anybody got? Any thoughts on that?
Because that's what I do every 6 months or every year. So the biggest difference between buying link services, I'm not recommending that you don't have to do it because we all know that the backlinks are number one to rank anything. So when you buy a domain, aged domain, obviously you have to go through the whole process to find out if the domain wasn't spammed and all those kind of stuff. But just again, like I showed on the presentation, just do the math. If you spend your time doing the outreach to gain the how do you call it, the links and all of that, and buying the age domain, the links are already there. You have just to know how to use those links on your favor when you launch the website. Obviously, you're not going to change, let's say, for example, a URL that talks about how to wash your cat properly, or giving a bath to your cat, just an example, right? Then you switch that URL to how you do plumbing, I don't know what. So that's really different. So, and the other thing is you have to keep the structure of the URL the same thing. And we saw it, Amazon does it, the big media does it. It's not something that it's new or anything like that. So you have to stick to that. So if you take, let's say you're doing outreach for a link for $50, let's say, it depends how many answers you get. That's one. If you buy them directly, that's another thing. But the $50 that you are spending and the $50 that you're spending on buying a domain, obviously the domain is not $50, can be $2,000, $1,000, whatever. I'm pretty sure that it will take you less time to rank for the keyword or for whatever you are targeting, rather than just reaching out to buy links or whatever you want to do. That's how I see it. For me, this is what I was doing for the last maybe 3 years after buying the domains from Odys. It makes it easier for me. I don't go into auctions. I just buy them from them, and sometimes I build them on the same domain. Mm-hmm. If it works perfectly, I just keep it that way. I don't touch anything. If I see that there is a bit of shakes, I just get a new domain and redirect the whole thing, and that's it.
Yeah.
It saves me a lot of time, but I know there are other people who wants to build the brand from the bottom up. I completely understand it, but the only way I think to get those links, you have to buy them up just to start. I don't think someone will just link to you because you're a new guy on the internet.
Yeah, I think probably Greg's referring as well to buying a domain to redirect into an existing site, just by the wording of the question, I think, a little bit. So if you've already got a site, then buying a domain and then redirecting in. So anything else you guys want to add to that? Or?
Yeah, just quick note with the buying link services. depending on, I mean, there's such a wide breadth of quality. Some of them are just terrible and others are much better. And typically when you're getting an age domain, like you can see there's some really good links going there, and you could just imagine like what it would take to get those kinds of links on like a new domain. Even if you were, if you had an unlimited budget, it would still be very difficult to do. So, you know, the quality varies a lot with link building services.
Yeah. I think in terms of, you know, maybe you won't be able to, you know, if you want to go into a specific niche or your site's in a specific niche, maybe it'll be really hard for you to pick up a domain. So maybe then you'd have to revert to link building services. But it is we always say it's a really cheap way of acquiring backlinks, purchasing domains.
Backlinks that you probably couldn't even acquire from other places. Like we looked at one the other day with links from like National Geographic, like an animal-based website. You couldn't even buy those. Like you couldn't from any kind of link building services. It's just impossible to even acquire unless it's naturally. And like I say, they're not going to. National Geographic are not going to link to your brand new website. So yeah, it's a great way of getting links that you couldn't even get anyway.
Yeah. Okay, good question here. Cody, with a budget of 200K, do you guys recommend buying multiple small sites, a larger site, or starting from scratch? Wow. That's a good question. What would you do? Okay, what would you do, Jaryd?
I get this question a lot. And the answer is very dependent on your goal and also what other things you have in play in your personal life in terms of other investments. For example, if you have a property portfolio and some other investments and you're pretty comfortable, pretty stable, and you can go a bit more and you just want less work, but you want to earn more money and have less businesses, then 200K online businesses is fine to just buy one. It really is dependent on the person though. And so that's what you need to sit down and work out. What is your risk tolerance? What other things you have in place? And then how much work do you want? For example, somebody that's starting out with a budget of 200K and has no other investments, I believe that you could buy, I think maybe starting around, you know, the 50 to 80K range, 50 to 100K range could be good. Work out if you like that type of business, what sort of, you know, revenue split in terms of affiliate and ad revenue in that business, and then managing that business and learn it, understand it a bit more if you're green and brand new to this, and then work out, do you want to keep that business and add a few more on, or sell that and buy one for 200K? And there's so many things in between what I've just mentioned of buying one for 200K and you've got backup income and other investments where you're pretty solid and stable, and buying one 200K site is not a big risk to you. And then if you got nothing else in terms of backup sort of investments and stability financially and other wealth building strategies in place, then maybe starting off smaller with one, learning it first, and then moving into buying multiple to spread your risk through diversification. That's what I would suggest to people. But I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say, because that's usually the question I get will be dependent. The answer from the question that I get from a person is I will know what their background is. So I'll be able to say specifically, this is what I think you should do. And let's have a conversation about it and how it feels for you first. Because there's no point in investing with a feeling of like I'm out of my depth and feeling nervous and being panicked about it, because then you'll be stressed about it and the decisions you make won't be beneficial to the portfolio that you go for.
Yeah, cool. Doug, what would you do?
So one thing Jaryd said is like looking at your whole assets allocation, your net worth, and like all that stuff. While I've spent a lot of time in the affiliate marketing and niche site space, I have like a lot of other, most of my net worth is elsewhere by a huge proportion. I think investing in a website is really risky. I'd love to debate it. We've talked about it a little bit before, but I think it's really risky if you don't know what you're doing. So if you've gone through a few of these, great. So if I had 200K, I know we got time here. So if I had 200K, I'd probably put 150K in an index fund. This is not investment advice. I'd probably put it somewhere fairly safe for the long term. And then I have 50K to play with here. I'd buy a site that's maybe like 25,000. I'm assuming you don't have much experience. I'd buy a site for 25,000. You have another 25K to invest and build and experiment. And then you've spread your risk a little bit. And I'm just looking at a very isolated question based on not knowing anything else. But let's say you have $1.2 million in your other assets and you want to buy a 200K site, go for it. You have some other stuff going on. It's spread out a little bit. You have a house or whatever. But if you just have 200K and no other assets, don't buy a website for over, I don't know, like $25,000. That would stress me out. But I'm risk averse. So
I'm so glad we got somebody that's in the fire community, heavily in the fire community, answering this question, because I wholeheartedly believe in a lot of the stuff that comes out of fire, Doug, and having some diversification before you go into sites is good, unless you're happy to take some risks and go aggressive with growth. It's a really, like, this is a good discussion. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on it. It's interesting.
And then one other thing to throw in is, like, are you 52 with kids about to go to college, or are you 24 and your expenses are low and you're like, all right, now's the time to take a chance. So all these factors come into play.
It's really interesting you guys mentioned that, because I'm personally the opposite of you guys. Like, most of my personal net worth is tied up in my websites. It's like the other end of the spectrum. And I'm comfortable with that risk. I think you've just got to be comfortable with what your risk to reward is. Like, we obviously have the agency and things like that, and I've got some other investments, but not a ton outside of our business and my websites. But it's really interesting, just the different kind of opinions of, Doug, you're mostly outside and I'm mostly kind of in that space. And it is risky. Like, this Google update just happened and some of my sites got hit and things like that. But on the whole, I think you've got to be comfortable of kind of where that allocation sits. The other thing just to take into consideration here is just buy-in versus building, because it says starting from scratch. And me and Mark did a 3-part episode on our YouTube channel about buy-in versus building, because if you ask me and Mark, we would give totally different answers. I'm very much into the buy-in side of things and growing and flipping, and Mark's very much into the building from scratch. And basically what came out of these 3 episodes were they're both legitimate routes to go. Over the long term, I think Mark gets a better ROI than me in terms of actual percentage gain, but I'm able to recycle the cash quicker. So all my flips on my sites, the ROI is less, but I'm able to do that more often than Mark is over, Mark's makes a couple of 100% over 3 years. I'll make not a couple of 100% in a flip, but I might be able to do that 3 times over 3 years, for example. So it just depends on your model. Or go for Jaryd.
I'd be curious to hear about the differences in time input in those 2 different ones as well, because it can be very dependent on a few things.
Yeah, and it depends if you've got the team, right? Because if Mark was building these sites from scratch, his time input would be way bigger than mine. Like, some of the sites, I've been on both Doug and Jaryd's podcasts and talked about how I've spent maybe like 5 days working on a site and flipped it and made a ton of profit. But I think if you've got the team, Mark doesn't spend really any time on his website. It's all outsourced. If he was doing it himself from scratch, though, he would be spending the full-time job working on it, right? So, yeah, it depends on your setup and the team around you too.
Sure.
Yeah, I can, if you don't mind, guys, I can add something to that. Yeah, I totally agree, especially when it comes to risk. It depends how much you can lose. So if you are going to spend the 200K and you have maybe 10 million in your account, go ahead. You're not worried about that. But if that's the only cash you have, I wouldn't do it. If it was me, for example, Empire Flippers, they launched last year a program. I'm even part of it. So they bring an expert who knows how to flip website. He has more experience, right? So what I did, I saw the site. So I took 30K from it. I invested in one of their programs. They have an expert who buy, sites and he flipped them. So you invest in that buying process, right? So when the site start making money, you get from it, right? And the other money, for example, if you are comfortable to put that money to buy your own site, a small site. If you are a beginner, so you can start learning. Buy a site $2,000 on Flipper or 1,000, and just start learning. And at the end, even if you lose that money, never say you lost it. You actually spent $2,000 to learn that nobody taught you, right? So you have just to know your risk. It's all about the risk. When you go to the insurance company, what's the thing they always assess? The risk. So that's all I can say for that. Just know your risks.
Yeah. Awesome. So what I'll do, I think now going forward is I'll just we'll wrap. I don't think we're going to get through all of these questions. So what I suggest is that we'll have them in the comments. Like we'll all return at some point back to the video, and we'll kind of try and answer them best we can in the comments. Yeah, we'll take a couple more. I'll try real quick, and then.
Hey Tony, good to have you here, man.
Just trying to think which would be a good one. Okay, yeah. If my website has proven to make money over the last 18 months, is it wise to borrow money to invest in a large volume of content? Kind of goes into what we were just saying a little bit.
Yeah, I would say I'll jump in as the fire person here and just say, like, no, you shouldn't go into debt to do this stuff. You should probably reinvest your profits and go from there and bootstrap it. But I probably wouldn't go into debt. No, not me.
Yeah,
I'm with Doug. I'm not about just more income with a lot more stress. You can still get more income over a decent period of time. It depends on what your goal is.
I'm gonna jump in and just say the opposite again. We talked about this on an episode recently, and I basically said, like, I definitely don't recommend this for people just starting out. By the way, if we've only got one site, if you've got a portfolio of sites, I find that you're more diversified. So, for example, a site can get hit in an update, and you've still got portfolio income coming in, and typically it'll balance out. But we can't really get, unless it's like credit card borrowing, you can't really get borrowing for websites here in the UK like you can in the US. You can't get an SBA loan or anything like that. But if I could get cheap finance and cheap debt, then at my current journey, like, I would leverage up and I would buy as much as I could at the moment, with debt being so cheap. So yeah, it's really interesting how you guys, I'm just the opposite to you guys, and maybe that'll change over time. Like, I don't know. I guess
I think it's a little bit different. I guess with one, if you've got one site and that's it, like with Quit Your Day here, like with you, Adam, I guess you could take some debt, but worst comes to the worst, you could probably sell your portfolio and pay off that debt, like if you really had to. Whereas if this site takes a dive or whatever, and they've kind of then like straddle with debt, like it's a bit different proposition maybe.
I definitely wouldn't recommend unless you've got like a diverse portfolio or something like that, and even something to fall back on. Like, if my websites went to zero tomorrow, we still got the agency, right? Like, I could still pay off my debt that way. So again, it comes down to that risk reward thing. Like, how much risk are you willing to take versus how much reward do you want? And it sounds like I'm just greedy compared to you guys, to be honest. I don't know.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll take this one last question, and I'll be able to answer it very quick because, So Tony, just hit us up, and we'll be able to find someone for you. But it generally takes only a few $100 generally to hire an SEO to sort out speed and stuff. So drop us a message, and we'll kind of hook you up with like some services we recommend for that. Got 5 minutes left. I thought, have you? One thing I thought was worth chatting about. Have you seen that Ahrefs launched a search engine this week called YEP, YEP? So yeah, interesting. I mean, I think it's got a long way to go yet, but they've literally just launched it like 2 days ago, and basically the business model they've got is like 90% of all revenue goes back to content creators. So, for example, Wikipedia would no longer have to ask for, like, try and get money for funds, because they would obviously be their site would be served and clicked on a lot, that they would get a lot of revenue just from creating content. So the model is 90% goes back. So it's an interesting model. I mean, obviously they've got a long way to catch Google or whatever, but they've invested like $60 million into this. So it's not like a pet project. It's kind of serious.
How does that work? How do they pay the publisher? Would you have to register with them? Like, how does that even work?
Man, I don't know. I haven't gone that deep. But yeah, it's a good point though. Yeah, I haven't gone that deep. I don't know, but interesting anyway that Ahrefs have done that. And
I think it's still very much in beta mode, right? Because I saw Spencer Hawes put out an article on it, and then if you go to the search engine, you search for yep.com on there, Spencer actually outranks Yep now. Like his article is number 1 for that, so still a long way to go, I think.
Yeah, it's yep.com, so it's a nice short domain name. But yeah, it's interesting idea. So
Apple is rumored to be launching their own search engine as well, right? Like everyone's at this.
It's about to go. Yeah, we're not a niche website builders, by the way. Awesome. Well, I just wanted to thank everyone. Thank Jaryd. Thanks Azedine. Thanks Doug. Thanks Adam for taking the time to show up today. Thanks for doing the talks as well. Like great. I've been through them all already today. So if you haven't yet, go and check out the talks from today. Also, we've got 2 more days of this event. So plenty more talks over the next couple of days, and 2 more panels the next 2 evenings as well. So bring your questions again tomorrow. Good point, Chris. Also sign up to the Niche Website Builders YouTube channel. We do 3 live streams a week and a podcast on there that you can catch. Anybody else want to plug anything before we sign off? Jaryd, Doug?
I'm good.
Good.
Well, good. You'll check out Jaryd on building businesses online. I got that in the right order because
buying business.
Buying business. Yeah. See, I always get the wrong words. And
I'm not the
online
build
at the
guy.
front or the end.
Yeah. Buying online businesses, Bob, isn't it? That's it.
Yeah, Bob, buying
that's
online
right,
businesses. Yeah.
And then niche site project for Doug. Azedine, have you got anywhere people can go to follow you? LinkedIn
or Facebook if they want to reach out, if they have questions, right? I don't have an actual service that I serve. I just keep it for myself, but yeah.
Cool.
You can reach me on LinkedIn or Facebook.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Glad we got to the end of the first day, and catch you everybody tomorrow.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Thanks.